Before I ask the Minister to address the House, can I first of all congratulate her on her appointment to high office. I was going through the list of ministers who have served in high office like herself, and of course in terms of female representation we're all too lax when it comes to female ministers to serve the state down through the years, starting of course with Countess Markovic and the current crop. Prior to yourself, Minister, there was only 19 female cabinet members, and I'm delighted, as we all are, that you have been elevated to high office. We're delighted that you're here today. Kerry, of course, is delighted that you are the Minister for Education, and I know that you will do the county and the country proud. Thank you, Minister, for being here today. Minister.
Gur magat a chathaoirligh. Tá an áthas orm bhean so don chéadúr mar ara I dachis. Gur magat as ocht an taim agus an deisio ó thuairteam a chathaoirligh. I am very proud to be here today for the first time as Minister for Education. I thank you and your colleague senators for the opportunity to engage with you today in regard to the roadmap for the reopening of our schools and the calculated grades process for Leaving Certificate 2020 students. At the outset, I wish to congratulate you, Cathaoirleach, in securing elevation to the role of Cathaoirleach last week. It represents a vote of confidence in yourself from your colleague senators. As a fellow Kerry native, may I say how proud we are in your home county of your achievement, and I wish you every possible success and good fortune in your new role. When the then Taoiseach announced on the 12th of March that all schools, colleges, universities and other training and learning facilities were to be closed as a consequence of COVID-19, it was the commencement of a series of significant challenges across the education and training sector. Those challenges have continued to be managed by my department, the education partners and a range of stakeholders ever since. The interests of students and their families, as well as the safety of the staff in the sector, have been the paramount considerations throughout as the challenges before us have been worked through. Coming from an education background and as a regular contributor to the debates on education in the Dáil before becoming the Minister for Education, I was keenly aware of the interest in education, but also the concerns and at times the anxieties of students, their families, their school communities, and more generally in how those challenges were needed to be addressed. One of the most significant challenges was how the Leaving Certificate class of 2020 could receive certification for their work, which would allow them to proceed to other study, to training, to work, or to follow other pursuits. I will return to the topic of calculated grades in a short while. Since I was appointed as Minister, the number one priority for me, for government, indeed my department and the wider school sector and indeed society, I would suggest, has been the safe reopening of our schools at the start of the new school year, late August to early September. We said in reopening our schools we would be guided by the available public health advice and comprehensive engagement with stakeholders or partners in education, including the school management bodies and staff representatives, as well as students and parents. There has never been any doubt but that I, as Minister, my predecessor, my department, school leaders and staff all want to see the schools reopen as normal in the new school year, in late August or early September, as I have said, and based on the normal timeframes for return. Yesterday, I brought to Cabinet proposals which outlined a comprehensive funding package and plan to provide the necessary supports and clear guidance for primary and post-primary schools to return safely in the new term. I also sought approval to publish a roadmap for the full return to schools, described yesterday by An Taoiseach as the most comprehensive and detailed sectoral plan he has seen. Cabinet agreed to both, and I was then able to publish the roadmap, together with details of over €375 million in additional funding necessary to support the implementation of the roadmap. The document outlines a comprehensive range of measures being provided to support the full reopening of schools in time for the start of the new school year. The roadmap was developed following intensive engagement with stakeholders from the education sector, including staff unions of teachers, SNAs, school caretakers and secretaries, representatives of principals and deputy principals, school management bodies and, of course, representatives of parents and post-primary students. The roadmap and the funding package recognise the challenges faced by schools in ensuring the safe return of over 1 million students and approximately 100,000 staff in 4,000 schools in the context of COVID-19. It sets out clear plans and practical guidance on the measures schools will need to take to operate safely and minimise the risk of the introduction and spread of infection in schools. The roadmap and its accompanying documentation provides schools with guidance on training, checklists for schools and preparing for reopening, and guidance for operating the schools safely in a COVID context. It advises on areas across logistics, curriculum, teaching, managing school activities, supporting pupils with additional needs, administration, and very importantly, well-being. In other words, it is a comprehensive plan. My department has prepared a suite of support materials for schools, including guidance on curriculum, well-being of students, well-being of staff, as well as protocols for minimising the risk of spread of infection in schools. In addition, I also published a template COVID-19 response plan for schools. These plans provide clear and practical guidance and support to schools on the range of measures that need to be put in place to bring everyone back to school safely. The funding supports are particularly comprehensive across a range of areas, and they include funding for replacement staff who cannot come to school as they are at very high risk of COVID-19. This includes teaching staff, SNAs and administrative staff. This can occur where staff members who are identified in line with H&C guidance as at very high risk of COVID-19 are advised to cocoon. Funding for additional supply panels at primary level is also included. This will ensure more certainty around the availability of substitutes for primary schools. Funding for over 1,000 additional teachers at post-primary to help with physical distancing and class sizes. This also includes 120 additional guidance posts. Funding to provide release days for teaching principals at primary level to meet the administrative burden arising from the changes and the impacts of COVID-19. This will mean that all teaching principals will have one release day per week, something which I am particularly pleased to be able to deliver, as I consider it really essential to support them to reduce the burden of work placed on their shoulders. In addition, there will be some release time for deputy principals in primary schools. Enhanced cleaning and hygiene measures, which are particularly important, are also included. The additional funding being provided will enable schools to have daily cleaning arrangements and to purchase supplies of hand sanitizer and any other PPE materials necessary. There is also funding for enhanced supervision, which is a key control measure to support schools to minimise interaction of students from different classes in line with public health advice. Funding to support school leadership, especially principals, in getting the schools ready is also included. All schools will now be able to employ an aide to help them get ready. And as announced in the July stimulus package, funding of €75 million will support minor capital works for all schools, both primary and second level. As I have said, reopening schools is a priority for government and has been my priority since becoming Minister for Education. In preparing for the reopening of schools, we know that most students, and indeed their families and school staff, will be looking forward to going back, reconnecting with school, reconnecting with staff and friends, and settling back into schoolwork. There is a strong emphasis in the roadmap on safety and on practical arrangements, but also on ensuring the well-being of the students and of the entire staff community. One of the key elements to ensuring that schools, once they reopen, can remain open is to prevent the COVID-19 virus from getting into a school in the first instance. This will mean students, their families and staff playing their roles in keeping the virus at bay by ensuring those who have symptoms or suspect that they have the virus stay out of school, by maintaining best practice in terms of hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette in school, and by minimising social contacts and respecting physical distancing practices. The public health advice, which underpins all, has been published and recognises that physical distancing in a school context has some specific elements, and it acknowledges that, and I quote directly, "The principle of distancing can be usefully applied in the school setting, allowing for some flexibility when needed. However, it must be applied in a practical way. recognising that the learning environment cannot be dominated by a potentially counterproductive focus on this issue. Reopening our schools is not just a matter of achieving a certain minimum physical distancing. It is about getting students re-engaged fully with learning, socialising with their peers, for some, preparing for examinations, for others, transitioning to school life or to a different level in terms of moving from primary to post-primary. Students need the support of their families, teachers and school staff in readjusting to school life and physical learning environments once again. It is realistic to predict that all students, parents and school staff will experience a broad range of feelings as part of the return to school. This may include a mixture of excitement, happiness and relief, but may also include fear and anxiety. This is understandable given these circumstances, and there is a response in place to support the well-being of our school communities as part of the planning to return to school. I can assure the House that there is full engagement with the education partners and that everyone is committed to supporting schools to prepare at a local level for their reopening. There will also be comprehensive communication with students and parents so that they are fully informed over the coming weeks. My department is providing dedicated and direct contact channels to schools so that where issues might arise, they can be resolved quickly. Government has provided a comprehensive plan and supports to ensure we can reopen our schools, but we must continue to work together to achieve the goal of actually seeing the schools reopen. Returning to the calculated grades process for the Leaving Certificate class of 2020, my predecessor announced the calculated grades process in May, and the school's level estimated mark data was returned to schools to the department by late June. A specific process for those learners who are outside of school settings was also put in place. The Calculated Grades Executive Office in my department has in recent weeks been undertaking the national standardisation process, a step necessary for the conversion of estimated marks to calculated grades in a manner comparable with Leaving Certificate grades over the years. In parallel, the Office has also been reviewing the circumstances of out-of-school learners who have sought to obtain calculated grades. Decisions on these applications will issue in the coming days. In parallel, Leaving Certificate 2020 students were asked to log on to the student portal set up to assist administrating the process over the last week to opt in to receive calculated grades. By the closing time of 4 p.m. yesterday evening, approximately 59,300 of those due to complete their studies in 2020 had chosen to opt in. The Calculated Grades Office will continue to follow up with students who have not yet opted to ensure who have already not opted to opt into the process, so as to ensure all eligible students who wish to avail of the Calculated Grades process have the absolute and maximum opportunity to do so. Senators, you will be aware that I announced previously that the results of the Calculated Grades process will issue to students on September 7th. And by the end of that week, on September 11th, the CEO has indicated it will issue the first round of offers for places in higher education. The additional 3 weeks for the release of results are necessary because we are operating a brand new system this year which was designed and implemented rather quickly. The key points are that students will receive a Leaving Certificate that is comparable with those obtained in other years, and that students can proceed to the next stage of their lives in a timely fashion. The State Examinations Commission is planning to hold the deferred Leaving Certificate written exams in November of this year, provided it is safe to do so. These are changed times. As a country, we have stood up to the challenges before us, and we have seen great resilience, tremendous community spirit, and a shared responsibility to contribute to the fight against the COVID-19 virus. We are now committed to reopening our society in every sense, and the school sector is now preparing to get our students back into classrooms in the coming weeks. Government is fully committed to supporting that return and has shown the scale of that commitment in the support package announced yesterday. I know senators in this House will support our students, our schools and indeed our communities in getting back to school as normal in the coming weeks. Fuimar a bhí riamh táinish ní neart go chur le chéile, gur maithagóibh go léir a chairlig.